The quiet way she said, "I don't see you as a man anymore," was worse than any shout. It wasn't anger, it was just cold dismissal. Like, I was already gone. That single sentence, delivered across our kitchen island, shattered something fundamental inside me. We had been together for 12 years, married for 8. Until that moment, I thought I knew what us meant. Her words felt like a final declaration, a judgment already rendered, with no appeal. I didn't yell. I didn't break down. I just stood there, staring at the chipped paint on the cabinet behind her, the one I'd promised to fix last summer. My mind felt strangely clear, though my chest ached with a hollowness I'd never known. I think I managed to ask, "What does that even mean?" But she just shook her head, turned, and walked away, leaving me with the silence and a question that felt like a death sentence. Our relationship, or what I thought it was, had always been solid. We met in college, grew up together. Jessica was smart, funny, always challenging me to be better. We built a life, a home, a rhythm. We shared friends, holidays, dreams. We talked about having kids someday, about retiring to a small house by the lake. Our biggest arguments used to be about what movie to watch or whose turn it was to do the dishes. Her saying she didn't see me as a man was completely alien to the woman I knew. It felt like a stranger had moved into her skin. Looking back, the shift wasn't sudden. It was like watching a slow-motion car crash, where you don't realize how bad it is until the impact. Over the last few months, maybe 6 or 7, there had been a subtle distancing. At first, I attributed it to stress. She'd been promoted at work, a demanding new role that often meant late nights and weekends. I tried to be supportive, picking up more slack at home, making sure dinner was ready when she finally got in. She used to text me throughout the day, little updates, funny observations. That tapered off. Now her phone was often face down, or she'd take it with her to another room if it buzzed. I didn't think much of it then. Everyone values their privacy, and I trusted her completely. We had always been open with each other. If she wanted to share something, she would. The physical affection also cooled. Our evening routine, which used to involve cuddling on the couch, watching TV, and often leading to something more, became more sterile. We'd sit on opposite ends of the sofa, scrolling through our own feeds. When I'd reach for her hand, she'd respond, but the warmth wasn't there. Kisses became pecks, then just a quick brush of lips. When I tried to initiate sex, she'd have a headache, or be too tired, or say she just wasn't in the mood. I told myself it was the stress, the exhaustion from her new job. I tried to be understanding. A good partner supports their spouse through tough times. But her words, "I don't see you as a man anymore," ripped through all those rationalizations. They forced me to reevaluate everything through a different lens, a colder, more skeptical one. If she truly felt that way, it wasn't just about stress. It was something deeper, something about me, or something about her. And if it was about her, then what was really going on? The next few days were a blur of quiet misery. We lived in the same house, but we were two ships passing in the night. She maintained her new routine. Out early, home late, always busy. I kept trying to talk, to understand, but she'd shut down. "There's nothing to talk about, Mark." I said what I said. Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion. It was this emotional vacuum that hurt the most. I started observing her more closely, almost involuntarily. I noticed things I'd dismissed before. Like the new perfume. It wasn't her usual scent. This one was richer, muskier, almost exotic. I remembered asking her about it a few weeks prior, saying I liked it. She just shrugged and said, "Oh, just something I picked up." I didn't push it then. Now it felt like a clue, but to what? Then there was the gym. Jessica had always been active, but her new regimen was intense. She was spending more time there, often coming home after 9 p.m., sweaty and tired, but also energized, and her body was changing, becoming more toned, more defined. She looked amazing, undeniably. When I complimented her, she'd just offer a small, almost unreadable smile, then retreat to the shower. I thought she was just taking better care of herself, feeling good about her promotion. It felt good to see her thriving, even if I was feeling left behind. One Saturday morning we were both home, a rare occurrence. I was making coffee, and she was in the living room, scrolling on her phone. She usually kept it pretty close, but she'd left it on the couch while she went to the bathroom. As I walked past, it buzzed with a notification. My eyes darted to it. It was from a messaging app I didn't recognize, and the preview showed just a few words. "Can't wait for our next session, winking face." My blood ran cold. Session? What kind of session? My mind immediately went to therapy, but the winking emoji felt completely out of place for a professional context. And the app itself was unfamiliar. I stood there, heart hammering, staring at the screen. My first instinct was to pick it up, to unlock it, to see. But I couldn't. Not like that. I'd never invaded her privacy before. It felt wrong, a violation of the trust we once shared. She came back then, drying her hands on a towel. She saw me standing by the couch, looking at her phone. Her eyes flicked from me, to the screen, and then back to me. Her expression was unreadable, a carefully constructed blankness. She picked up the phone, swiftly cleared the notification, and then tucked it under her arm. "Everything okay?" she asked, her voice calm, a little too calm. "Yeah," I mumbled, trying to act normal, trying to erase the image of those words from my mind. "Just wondering what kind of coffee you wanted." She told me, and I went back to the kitchen, my hands shaking slightly as I poured the water. The image of the text, "Can't wait for our next session, winking face," burned in my mind. It could be anything, I told myself. A new workout class? A specific hobby? But the emoji, the secrecy, it just didn't sit right. It felt like the first loose thread in a garment that was slowly unraveling, and I couldn't stop myself from pulling. Her words, "I don't see you as a man anymore," had been a cold shock, but it was the image of that text, "Can't wait for our next session, winking face," that truly set the hook. It became a filter, coloring everything I saw. The intense gym regimen, the new perfume, her increasing distance. It all started to coalesce into a disturbing pattern, pointing towards something I couldn't ignore, something I felt compelled to understand. Jessica's phone, once an item casually left on the counter, now seemed an extension of her hand. It was always face down, always within arm's reach. If I walked into the room, her thumb would instinctively swipe the screen, locking it or switching apps. She'd answer calls with her back to me, speaking in hushed tones, or step out of the room entirely to continue the conversation. "Just work," she'd say, a little too quickly, a little too dismissively, when she returned. It struck me how often work became the convenient explanation for everything. Her work hours did genuinely increase after the promotion, I knew that. But the details grew increasingly vague. When I'd ask about her day, she'd offer general summaries, lacking the usual enthusiastic recounting of successes or frustrations. The late nights became more frequent, always with a plausible explanation. A client deadline, a last-minute meeting, a networking event. But the way she smelled when she came home wasn't just work anymore. It was that new, muskier perfume, mingled with something else I couldn't quite place. But it wasn't the clean, almost antiseptic scent of an office. I started observing her car. The mileage usually stayed within a predictable range for her commute. Now sometimes it felt higher. I'd glance at the odometer when she left in the morning, and again when she pulled into the driveway at night. Some days the numbers didn't quite add up to just work and home. It wasn't enough to confront her, not yet, but it added to the growing pile of small, unsettling discrepancies. I also noticed she started filling her tank more often. Not a huge expense, but a change in pattern. The physical changes from her gym routine were undeniable. Her arms were more toned, her waist trimmer. She bought new workout clothes, which was understandable. But then came the new casual wear, tighter jeans, tops that were a little more form-fitting than her usual relaxed style. She started doing her hair differently too, a sleek, polished look instead of her usual simple ponytail or messy bun. It was an effort she hadn't made in years for our evenings at home. I tried to compliment her, to show I noticed, but her responses were always a brief, "thanks," or "just felt like a change." My attempts to bridge the distance between us felt like walking into a brick wall. I'd try to start conversations about our future, about vacations, about anything that used to excite us both. She'd nod, offer a minimal comment, and then quickly steer the topic away or pick up her phone. Physical touch, once a constant comfort, became almost non-existent. A casual hand on her arm in the kitchen would be met with a subtle pull away. A hug felt stiff and obligatory. When I tried to initiate intimacy, she'd always have an excuse. "I'm tired. My head hurts. I have a big day tomorrow." The excuses were always delivered gently, almost regretfully, but the outcome was always the same. The silence in our house grew heavy. It wasn't just the absence of talking, but the absence of comfortable presence. We were roommates, existing in parallel universes under the same roof. I'd watch her, trying to decipher the new person she'd become, or was becoming. Sometimes she'd catch my eye, and for a split second, I'd see a flicker of something in her gaze. Guilt, perhaps, or a deep sadness, or maybe just annoyance. Then it would be gone, replaced by an unreadable mask. One evening, I came home a little earlier than usual. Her car wasn't in the driveway, which wasn't unusual, but the kitchen light was on. I walked in to find a half-empty glass of wine on the counter, and her gym bag, usually neatly tucked away, was splayed open on a chair. Inside, I saw a small, unfamiliar key. It wasn't her car key, or the house key, or her office key. It was a small, plain silver key, the kind that might open a locker or a small drawer. My heart rate sped up. Before I could really process it, I heard her car pulling in. I quickly pushed the gym bag back into a less conspicuous position on the chair, trying to look casual. She walked in, surprised to see me. "Hey," she said, a little breathlessly, "thought you'd be later." "Meeting ended early," I replied, my voice steady. "Just got in." She looked at me, a quick, assessing glance. "Oh, okay." She picked up her gym bag, slung it over her shoulder, and headed straight to the bedroom. The key was gone. That night, she told me she was going out with friends from work, something she hadn't done in months. "Just a quick happy hour," she said. She was dressed in one of her new outfits, a dark blouse, and those tighter jeans, and she'd put on more makeup than usual. That musky perfume filled the hallway as she walked out. I stood by the window watching her pull away, and an hour later, I was still standing there. Then, a notification buzzed on my own phone. It was from a shared calendar event she had set up weeks ago for a family dinner with my parents, scheduled for that same night. She'd forgotten to cancel it, or more likely, she'd forgotten that I'd still have it on my calendar. The happy hour was a lie. The quiet investigation wasn't a choice anymore. It was an urgent necessity. The notification on my phone confirmed what I already knew. Jessica had lied. The shared calendar, a relic from happier times, showed parents' dinner, 7 p.m. for that very night. My own parents. She'd forgotten to cancel it. Or perhaps she just assumed I would. The easy dismissiveness of it, the casual lie, felt like a fresh wound. It wasn't about the dinner anymore. It was about the audacity, the cold calculation. The game had changed. My quiet curiosity solidified into a chilling determination. I stayed awake that night, not angry, but hollow. The image of her walking out, the musky perfume, the tight clothes, the dismissive wave, it all replayed in my mind. Sleep didn't come. Instead, I started mapping out a strategy. I wasn't looking for a fight. I was looking for clarity. The pieces were there, scattered. Now I had to connect them. My first target was her car. Jessica usually drove to work, about 25 minutes each way. I knew the approximate mileage for a typical week. I started subtly checking the odometer, noting the number when she left and when she returned. At first it seemed to align. But then, on days she claimed late meetings or extra gym sessions, the numbers didn't add up. An extra 30, sometimes 50 miles would appear, unexplained by her stated errands. The extra gas she was filling, once a weekly chore for me, was now something she handled, almost protectively. She'd complain about the rising cost of fuel, but never offered an explanation for the increased consumption. I also turned my attention to our shared laptop, a desktop we kept in the living room. She rarely used it anymore, preferring her personal work laptop or her phone. But sometimes, when she left her work laptop open, I'd glimpse the browser history. It was always cleared. Always. An innocuous detail, perhaps, but coupled with everything else, it struck me as deliberate. I started using the desktop more, hoping she would forget to clear it one day. She never did. Her digital life was a fortress. My mind kept returning to the small, silver key I'd glimpsed in her gym bag. It wasn't for our house, or our mailbox, or her work locker. It was too small for the car. I'd seen it only once, tucked away in a zippered compartment. The next morning, as she showered, I went to her gym bag, lying on the floor beside our bed. My hands trembled slightly as I searched the small pockets. It was there, cold and metallic. Exactly as I remembered, I slipped it into my pocket. That day I went to work, but my mind was elsewhere. I ran through every locked drawer, every hidden compartment in our house. We had a small, antique writing desk in her home office, one she inherited from her grandmother. It had a few small drawers, always locked. I'd never paid it much attention. It was her private space, her keepsakes. I remembered a conversation, years ago, where she told me she kept old letters and photos in there. It felt like a violation to even think of it. But the silver key in my pocket felt heavy, like a promise. That evening, Jessica told me she had a late gym session, then some paperwork to catch up on at the office. She'd be home late. It was almost too convenient. I watched her leave, then waited an hour, letting the silence settle in the house. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from a strange, cold clarity. This was it. I walked into her office, the air thick with the faint scent of her new perfume. I tried the desk drawers. One was indeed locked. I pulled the silver key from my pocket. It slid into the lock smoothly. A quiet click, and the drawer opened. Inside, it was orderly, almost sparse. A few old photos, some dried flowers, a small velvet pouch. This was where she kept her real secrets. I emptied the velvet pouch. There wasn't money or jewelry. Instead, I found a small, prepaid burner phone, older model, basic. My blood ran cold. Next to it was a small, almost empty bottle of men's cologne. It was a musky, expensive brand I didn't recognize, and certainly one I didn't own or wear. It smelled faintly of the new perfume Jessica was using. I picked up the burner phone. It wasn't password protected. The message log was short, mostly recent. My eyes scanned the messages. There were multiple exchanges with an unsaved number. One text jumped out at me immediately. "Can't wait for our next session, winking face." It was the exact message I'd seen on her actual phone months ago. The sender was the same unsaved number. It dated back 5 months. My breath hitched. 5 months. That's when the distance started, when the affection began to wane, when she told me, "I don't see you as a man anymore." I scrolled further. The messages were discreet, coded almost. "Ready for tonight? See you at our usual place. Can't wait for Friday." Nothing explicit, nothing with names, but the context was undeniable. The frequency, the tone, the secrecy, it all pointed to one thing. And there was a specific string of messages about planning a weekend getaway for next month, with a mention of finding a quiet place. I felt a wave of nausea, followed by a profound, terrifying calm. This wasn't a fleeting mistake. This was planned, ongoing, a double life built on lies. The cologne, the separate phone, the sessions, the mileage discrepancies, the cleared browser history, the new clothes, the musky perfume, the lie about the happy hour, and her words to me, "I don't see you as a man anymore." Every single piece clicked into place, forming a picture that was sharp, undeniable, and utterly devastating. I put everything back exactly as I found it. The burner phone in the velvet pouch, the cologne beside it, the key in the lock. Then I locked the drawer. The click echoed in the silent room. My hands no longer trembled. They were steady. The numbness had returned, a deeper, colder kind of numbness than before. I had my answer. It wasn't the one I wanted, but it was the truth. The grim certainty settled over me, heavy and suffocating. I walked back to the living room and sat on the couch, staring at nothing, waiting for her to come home. I sat on the couch, the silence of the house pressing down on me. Each tick of the grandfather clock in the hall felt like a hammer blow. The house, our home for 8 years, now felt like a stage set for a drama I never wanted to be in. The grim certainty of what I'd found was a heavy, suffocating blanket. My hands were steady, my breathing even, but inside, a cold, empty cavern had opened up. I just sat there, staring at the faint reflection of the living room in the darkened window, waiting. The sound of her key in the lock, then the door opening, broke the spell. It was Jessica. She walked in, dropping her keys onto the small table by the door. She looked tired, her shoulders slumped, but when she saw me, a flicker of something, surprise, maybe unease, crossed her face. "Hey," she said, her voice a little too bright. "Long day. You still up?" I didn't move. I just looked at her, really looked at her. The new hairstyle, the subtly tighter clothes she'd started wearing, the new, muskier perfume I'd first noticed 5 months ago. It all clicked into place now, pieces of a puzzle I'd unknowingly been trying to solve for months, fitting together into a picture I wished I'd never seen. "Jessica," I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil within me. "We need to talk." She hesitated, her hand still on her purse strap. "Can it wait until morning, Mark? I'm exhausted." "No," I said, my voice still quiet. "It can't." She slowly walked into the living room, dropping her purse onto a chair, her eyes searching mine, probably for anger or tears. She found neither. Just a profound, unsettling calm. "What's going on?" she asked, a defensive edge starting to creep into her tone. I took a slow breath. "5 months ago you told me something that stuck with me. You said, 'I don't see you as a man anymore.'" Her eyes widened, a flash of recognition, then something else, a carefully veiled expression. "Mark, we've talked about this. I was frustrated. I was stressed with work. It wasn't fair for me to say that." "Was it the truth, Jessica?" I asked, my gaze unwavering. "Because I think it was. I think it was your truth. And I think it was the truth, because something had already started to change for you. Something had already replaced me in your eyes." She shifted uncomfortably. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do," I said. "Over the last 5 months, I've watched you change. The new perfume, the gym, the late nights, the sudden lack of interest in us. The way you guard your phone, the hushed calls, the disappearing acts. I tried to make sense of it. I tried to tell myself it was just work, just the promotion, just stress. But it wasn't, was it?" She swallowed hard, her jaw tightening. "Mark, please. You're overreacting. I've been busy. We've both been busy." "Have we?" I countered. "Or have you been busy with something else entirely?" I stood up, walking slowly towards the antique desk in the corner. She watched me, her breath catching. I reached into my pocket, pulling out the small silver key. I held it up between my thumb and forefinger. "I found this in your gym bag, Jessica," I said, my voice still level. "It unlocks a drawer in this desk, the one you keep locked." Her face went pale. The color drained from her cheeks, leaving her looking hollow. She didn't say anything. She just stared at the key, then at me. "Inside that drawer," I continued, "I found a burner phone, a prepaid phone, Jessica, and a bottle of men's cologne, not mine." I watched her. Her eyes darted away, to the floor, to the wall, anywhere but me. "The messages on that phone," I went on, my voice still quiet, but with an edge of steel she couldn't miss. They go back 5 months. Can't wait for our next session. Usual place. Thinking about our weekend getaway. 5 months, Jessica. Right when you stopped seeing me as a man. She finally met my gaze, and in her eyes, I saw not defiance, but a profound, overwhelming defeat. Her shoulders sagged. The carefully constructed facade crumbled. "Mark, I can explain." Her voice was a whisper, barely audible. "Can you?" I asked. "Can you explain why you lied about going to happy hour when you were supposed to be at my parents' house for dinner?" "I found the calendar entry, Jessica. I knew you lied. And the mileage on your car, the gas fills. All those little things I told myself weren't anything. They were everything, weren't they?" She shook her head, tears welling in her eyes now. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." "But it did," I stated, not asking. "It happened for 5 months. And you said you didn't see me as a man anymore. Was that your way of preparing me? Or was it just the truth of how you felt, because you were already with someone else?" She just looked at me, tears streaming down her face now. She couldn't deny it. The burner phone, the cologne, the messages, the timeline, it was all there, undeniable. I was unhappy," she choked out. "I felt neglected. And then work got so intense, and he was just there. He listened, he made me feel." She trailed off, unable to finish the thought. I felt nothing. No anger, no rage, no desire to yell or break things. Just a crushing, suffocating emptiness. The love I once felt, the trust, it was all gone, evaporated like dew in the morning sun. "So you found someone who made you feel like I wasn't anymore," I finished for her. "And for 5 months you lived a double life, you maintained this lie. You let me try to figure out what was wrong with me, why I wasn't enough, why you didn't see me as a man." She crumpled into a chair, sobbing silently, her face in her hands. "This is over, Jessica," I said, the words echoing in the quiet room. My voice was calm, almost devoid of emotion. "Our marriage, it's done." She looked up, her face streaked with tears, a desperate plea in her eyes. "No, Mark, please. We can fix this. I can stop. I can end it. I'm so sorry." "It's too late for that," I replied, the finality in my tone leaving no room for argument. "The trust is gone. It didn't just vanish today. It's been eroding for months, while you lied and pretended. And I've been living with the ghost of our marriage for too long." I walked over to the closet in the hall, pulling out a small duffel bag. I started to pack a few essentials. She watched me, her sobs gradually subsiding into quiet sniffles. There was nothing more to say. The conversation was finished. The evidence spoke for itself, and her confession, however reluctant, simply confirmed the grim certainty I had already arrived at. I left the house that night, the cold, clear air, a stark contrast to the hollow ache in my chest. I drove to a friend's place, not wanting to deal with the inevitable questions from my parents just yet. Looking back, that quiet investigation, the methodical piecing together of the truth, was my way of coping. I didn't scream or rage, I just sought answers. And the answers, when they came, were devastating, but also strangely clarifying. The phrase, "I don't see you as a man anymore," once a brutal blow to my identity, now served as the chilling starting pistol for the end of everything. It wasn't about me, it was about her, and what she had already started doing. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with the practicalities of separation and the emotional weight of a broken life. But the fog of confusion had lifted. The doubt that had plagued me for months was replaced by a cold, hard truth. It hurt, more than anything I'd ever experienced. But at least now, I knew. And knowing, I realized, was the first step, however painful, toward building something new, something honest, out of the wreckage. The silence I had learned to live with for months now felt different. It was no longer the silence of suspicion, but the silence of a closing chapter. And for the first time in a long time I could begin to hear myself again.